The lights you see are from some of the campsites of the Maha Kumbha Mela, a Hindu spiritual event that happens every 144 years. No one even knows how many people are coming. Some say 30 million, others say as many as 70 million will attend. It's 4 a.m. in Allahabad, and maybe you can hear the noise behind me. This is incredible. At this event, I'm told there are 40,000 public address systems. The noise pollution is incredible. It's like nothing I've ever experienced because you're picking up part of a mantra here, part of a chant there. There's nothing quite like it. It's like a totally overwhelming environment where the noise just permeates your consciousness. The Indians have PA envy. I mean, it's like each group, their power is defined by the number of watts of sound that they can pump out with the chanting, with the music. And it all competes with each other, and it becomes sort of this acoustic soup. And yesterday we went down to the Kumbha Mela site, and there's just no way to describe it. I've never seen anything that massive, and yet it seemed very organized. You had specific areas that groups were assigned to, and they had their PA systems, and they were blasting, and people were visiting, and people were sitting in the corners smoking, probably hashish. But that was rare. For the most part, people were contemplative. It had the feeling of a religious tent meeting that was huge. It stretched for miles along the Ganga. We walked until my feet were so tired. It took a certain spiritual energy to walk through this. And at first, as a Westerner, I felt very threatened. I felt that there were all these dark-skinned people that were there to get my stuff, you know, and I've limited what I'm carrying to the basics, my passport, my cameras, and wallet. One problem in India is that if you get money changed, it's 46 rupees to the dollar. So if you get like $100 changed, you end up with this huge wad of bills. You have to like find somewhere to stash it. The Himalayan Institute compound where I'm staying is located just south of the Kumbha Mela in the spiritual suburbs, and it is a very secure facility. I've only been here 3 days, and it's been one eye-opening, mind-blowing, insightful experience after another. I found a flower pot suspended from a metal railing that I'm using for a tripod. It is a little unstable. It's shaking. But so far, stability doesn't seem to be the dominant theme. It's strange because there's like the stability of a culture that's existed for thousands of years. And yet at any moment it seems like total chaos. It's fascinating for a Westerner who's totally unequipped to deal with this. You know, we've been told that sadhus instructed the cobras to go away for the duration of the month. We held session last night with 3 of the swamis that we had seen at the site yesterday. Swamiji's insights were just incredible. I talked about the concept of the limitations of Western science and how it's broken into 2 parts, that we believe there's the unknown, and then there's what we've found out about the unknown. But in India, he explained that there really are 3 concepts at work. There's the what we don't know, then there's what we've learned. And then there's the unknowable, a whole area of philosophical thought that we just can't know about. And that was a mind-blowing concept. I mean, the sheer consequences of there being whole areas of knowledge that science cannot know really does sort of throw Western science on its head. It was a beautiful concept explained by Babaji last night of the I-ness. The goal is to move beyond the I-ness to the collective consciousness. And these are concepts that, whether you can grasp them as a quick 30-second commercial, is probably impossible. You know, you have to sit through the intellectual build-up, and it's very, very different from the way we convey information. I mean, they seem to be trying to convey wisdom, and it'll never be condensed to a 30-second commercial. It'll never be condensed to a sound bite, the kind of things that passes for information flow in the West right now. We walked through this entire Kumbha Mela site yesterday, and I saw almost no trash. It's somehow millions of people had come, and they had brought food in bags, and they'll carry the bags back and reuse them. There were no huge trash cans around. I just can't imagine in the United States having a festival that could attract millions of people and not having mounds of trash. I mean, it's just not there because they have no concept of trash. And I've decided that's why that in certain areas you'll see trash thrown on the side of the road, because they really, I think, don't understand the difference between a plastic, polystyrene, whatever, and a banana peel. And the banana peel biodegrades. The banana peel will rejoin nature. The banana peel will become one with nature. The plastic wrapper, the aluminum mylar coated candy wrapper, Fritos lay bag will be our gift to the future. I'm sitting on this tip overlooking the Ganga, watching these people bathe. I've decided what I probably should do is take the flashlight that I'm holding and using it for light and open a third eye, because I actually experienced my third eye the other day, and it was like, I've heard one exists, but I've never really experienced it through meditation, so it's located somewhere about right there. I could just sit by the Ganga the other afternoon and then do minimal concentration and minimal evacuation of the mind with all these Western ideas streaming through, and then all of a sudden this blazing light right in the center of my forehead was there, and I realized, oh, this is what it's about. I'm beginning to wonder if I'm really a spiritual person. I mean, I'm around people here who are clearly more in touch with spiritual issues than I am, because they just seem to be attuned to some other frequencies that don't turn my circuits on. And it's clear that embracing some of the spirit around the Kumbha Mela and around Hinduism requires this leap of faith that my Western rational mind just refuses to take. From what I know, when they talk about physics and when they talk about metaphysics, the concepts make sense given what science knows, but then it'll be woven with these myths of gods, and and I find it very difficult to embrace. I found a book that's like a basic introduction to the gods, and they've got each god's picture of the statues that represent them and a description of where they came from. And I've started reading that, and it's very helpful for somebody with my limited understanding of the Eastern tradition to have like a guidebook. So when I see these little icons and statues, I can like flip through the guidebook and It's like a sort of Gods Are Us guide or something. We had a boat ride on the Ganga that was unlike anything I've ever experienced. The boat was being pulled by a young boy, and he had a rope that he was on the bank walking, and occasionally he would have to get into the river and pull us. The river Ganga is very shallow, and that's why it looks like people are walking on water, but they're sandbars, or it's just very shallow. So the commerce that happens on the river happens in very small boats, pulled by human labor, or poled to push it along the bottom. It was one of those journeys into consciousness. We passed by some of the sadhu camps with sadhus bathing. As we moved up the Ganga, we passed an area for burial. We saw corpses floating in the water, garlanded with flowers. They had turned white, carrion like some type of buzzard were starting to eat at the corpses. Occasionally a dog would come out into the water and eat at the corpses. And it was this natural recycling process that was one of those things that literally took your breath away. And actually it took your breath away in more ways than one, because the stench as we went through there, my eyes were watering. It was a smell of death, a smell that I'd never experienced before. And then we got to the confluence of the two rivers, the two sacred rivers. My camera battery went down in the trip, and so I was able to get very limited footage. And that made me reflect on technology and the limitations of technology in a situation like this. The dust has been very hard on my camera equipment. The humidity in the mornings has been very hard on the camera equipment. And periodically getting warnings that the heads are clogged. And I don't know if it's somehow reading the fact that my head is clogged and that I'm here trying to clear it, or if it's telling me the video heads are clogged. So one of the guards just passed by with a huge stick and sees me out here talking to this plant, and I'm sure that he thinks I'm totally crazy. Yesterday was the chief bathing day of the Kumbha Mela, and I walked down to the Kumbha Mela in spite of two huge blisters, and on the way down there these boys kept coming up to us and saying, "Boat, boat, boat." We thought it was going to be 100 rupees, but in the end they kept saying, no, we didn't mean 50 rupees each, we meant 100 rupees each. It's 200 rupees. So there was like this little argument. We finally paid them because basically 200 rupees would be $4. And we were out on the Ganga, and we went to the confluence of the two sacred rivers, and we watched millions of people bathe. All these boats appeared. I had no idea where all these boats came from, and people were bathing from the boats because the Ganga is very shallow, and it's easy to find sandbars out in the river. I'm now in a real bathroom in Benares. Running water. We weren't cold last night. It was such a shock to wake up at about 3 and need to go to the bathroom, and I was lying there and thinking, I don't want to get up and go outside. I don't want to get up and go outside. And then I realized, I'm inside a room. All I have to do is get up and get out of bed and walk around the corner, and there's a toilet, a Western toilet. It's a phenomenal experience. In typical Indian fashion, the ancient city of Benares has two other names. Hindus call it Varanasi, the name used by Indians before the Muslim invasion in the 12th century. Part of the city is still referred to as Kashi, an even older name. Whatever it is called, the city is the home of thousands of temples. Many have been destroyed and rebuilt after they were pillaged by invading armies. Outside of Benares is Sarnath, a Buddhist shrine where Buddha delivered his first message after enlightenment. Buddhists have built a museum and temple on the site. The temple and grounds were as peaceful as any place I visited in India. After Sarnath, we visited the Ghats, a place for cremations and ritualistic baths in the sacred Ganga. Here, people do laundry side by side with religious purification rituals and bodies disposed in the river by the poor who cannot afford cremations. In spite of the bodies and raw sewage running into the Ganga, the Hindus believe the water is holy and will purify anything in it. The Hindus believe the god Shiva lived in Benares at one time, and most of the temples are dedicated to him. Priests who do the cremations live in the large houses on the Ghats. One of their jobs is to maintain the sacred fires that light the funeral pyres. Most cremations take place at night, and no photography is allowed. In this sacred ritual, the eldest son lights the fire and crushes the corpse's skull with a large stick. This is done so that the skull cannot be used for black magic. After returning to Allahabad, we took a rickshaw into the city, and it was a wild ride through some of the worst traffic congestion on earth. Driving across the bridge into Allahabad, we passed the Kumbha Mela site, and we could get a feeling of its magnitude. In the city, you can see the tension between the old and the new. Just buying stamps exposed us to the most inefficient postal system I'd ever seen. Throughout the city, you see creeping signs of the Western conceptions of progress. In the older part of the city, the narrow streets and markets create a press of humanity, but they also teem with a social life that is missing from the modern Western city. Visiting an open-air musical instrument store gave us a glimpse of how marketing and repairs must have been done for centuries. Back in the rickshaw, we continued our journey through the congested streets, filled with everything from smoky diesel buses to free-ranging cows out for a stroll. There are posters up in Allahabad saying that this is the largest gathering of humanity ever. And yet, there's no way to prove it. It's so dispersed. It goes on for miles of just temple after camp after temple. You see people defecating and urinating just on the side of the road. And yet there are restrooms that have been set up by the Indian Army. Restrooms, they're basically little tin structures that you can go in and urinate. But large numbers of people ignore them. And it seems as if they're perfectly happy as long as their back is turned to the crowd to squat and defecate. India really is a country where perceptions of the West are turned on their head. The material pursuits are here. You turn on Indian television and you see the commercials that are promoting a lifestyle that's totally unattainable by millions of people in the villages. You see these villages and the material amount of material goods that they have is so minimal. It's not even a fraction of what we throw away in the United States. And all of these things are just an assault on standard perceptions of what it takes to exist, what it takes to be happy. I've heard a number of people say, and I've observed it myself, that you walk into these villages and the children are happy, the adults are happy, the adults work far less than they do in the United States, and they're subsisting, and they probably are cold at times and they're hungry at times. There's entire families are in one room of a brick or mud or straw structure, or maybe even a structure that's just covered by plastic, and yet they all seem very happy. That the whole perception that we have, get up, go to work, rush, 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 just doesn't exist here. I mean, there's rushing in the cities, but in the villages, the pace is so much slower. The pace is around natural rhythms. I've been sitting here meditating on the banks of the Ganga, and it's been a very profound experience. I've been using the new mantra that was given me at sunset a few nights ago. But it's very hard to quiet the mind and really flush out all of those Western thoughts and memories of the past and to-do lists that we're always putting together. And yet, there is a certain peacefulness when you begin to achieve a meditative state that's very hard to describe. And I feel that I'm really just a neophyte. Yesterday was the largest bathing day at the Kumbha Mela, and movement was virtually impossible. I walked out on the bluff overlooking the Ganga and saw thousands of people. It seemed like entire villages walked down here and would enter the water. Of course, the Ganga is probably one of the dirtiest rivers I've ever seen, and so I'm not sure of the full spiritual experience that people are getting. In terms of sanitation, we've had several diseases strike here at the camp. There have been major respiratory problems, and the coughing is everywhere. And then there's the usual traveler's diarrhea that someone from the West experiences in India. You get the feeling that if something really serious were to break out, that it would not be contained, that it could be spread. Hindus believe that there are like 4 cycles of history, and that right now we're in the age of Kali. And this age of Kali is considered the Dark Ages. And there's no indication how long this age will last. But in this age of Kali, the god Shiva has gone away and gone to sleep. And at some point, Shiva will awaken and will return and bring about an age of enlightenment. And one does get the feeling that this really is some type of dark age, because in India there seems to be massive hopelessness. The population densities are so great that there's tremendous pressure on people, huge numbers of beggars. And then there's this contradiction with materialism, where you turn on the television in India and you'll see these commercials for a lifestyle that's a total fantasy that could never be realized by the villages. And in the West, we have a very different situation. We've obtained all of the material goods, but there's a spiritual hollowness. I've had fantasies that maybe Shiva would return during the Kumbha Mela. He would probably ride up in one of these SUVs that the Swamis drive around in, and I decided that probably the SUV would stand for the Shiva utility vehicle. I'm in a hotel in Agra, and I'm standing in the bathtub because that's where I found the light to record this. It's been one of those absolutely amazing days. We saw the rear of the Taj Mahal, an area that most tourists don't see. But more amazing than the Taj Mahal was an abandoned temple about 40 kilometers north of Agra. And we drove up there this morning, and the spiritual energy that came together at this temple where this Muslim ruler had built it to have a place to worship with his 3 wives, one a Hindu, one a Muslim, and one a Christian. And I was walking through the temple barefoot, and I felt this surge of energy like going through my feet, rising up through my body. And And there was another moment in the Wish Temple where you can tie strings on these lattices that cover the windows. I really felt that I was in the presence of the collective power of millions of wishes that had been done. And the amazing thing about this temple is that it was built and only used 16 years before it was totally abandoned because the water supply was bad.
After Agra, we drove back to Delhi on a modern 4-lane road, which passed a new type of shrine. Imagine the marketing challenge of trying to sell Big Macs to Hindus who view the cow as sacred, yet the vegetarian part of the menu could do very well in the States as people eat less meat. Perhaps this McDonald's and its 4-lane road is a metaphor for the real clash of the 21st century, the battle between the values of the commercial and the spiritual world.